Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second SIS webinar of this year, SIS and cost control processes. We will now begin today's webinar. I will now hand you over to our presenter for the day, Bruno Roussel. Bruno?
Hello. Hello, good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. So welcome to this webinar. Today, we will speak about cost control. We try to give you understanding of what is cost control, what to consider, what are some findings, some interesting discussion with our two guest speakers today. This Anna Zielenütscher from Lufthansa Group Business Service. She's senior specialist in airport cost controlling. She has a lot of experience about controlling airport charges. And Mr. David Vaughan from Qantas, that is finance manager, revenue accounting and taxes. And this is a present SIS steering group chairman. What we will cover today, we'll start with an introduction. I will give you some big picture about cost control, some element of reflection. Then we will move to a more practical example, how this is implemented with an airline. In the example of Anna with cost control of ATC. And David will share more views and consideration on cost control. So both of them have a different experience, have different background. And I think this will be translated into the webinar very nicely. We spent quite a bit of time to prepare this webinar because we didn't have anything ready for that. So everything is made specifically for this webinar. We'll do some conclusion and then we will move to Q&A. So first to understand is cost of airline is very spread among a lot of different type of costs. Some of the costs are indirect spend, so are cost of labor or cost of general administration. So they are not targeted for what we do with cost control. Cost control focus on direct operating costs. So it will be cost linked to usage of an aircraft, operation of an aircraft. You see here that between 40 and 50% of the cost of an airline is coming from this area. And it could be that depending on the nature of the charge, the process in the airline is different. When we talk cost control system, we are talking about different capability, different opportunity. A lot of time people start cost control with fuel, jet fuel, because they want to match invoice for fuel. And also often they do engineering because there is a purchase order and it's easy to match. So these are the two starting points we see with airline. But then when you look at the cost control system, you are looking a bit more widely and you start to think about airport charges, air navigation charges, station and ground. And what is happening is all those costs, they are not PO based. So that means that you cannot match them automatically. It's based on consumption. Some of them, ETC, for example, are easier to match because they are linked to operation and pricing. So that means that there is not anything specific or ad hoc that varies. You can define by yourself what is the cost of an ETC. When you will move to costs like airports or ground handling, then you will need to get additional information, consumption information, and it could be from the station manager, it could be from a meter, it could be number of liter of de-icing that was used for the airplane, number of kiosks, the type of parking, or some element that will justify the cost. So the ballpark figure are here. We try to match 50% of the cost. What is happening in cost control? Cost control is based on detailed cost accrual. That means that you have understanding of the operation of an aircraft. You know he will go to that airport. You know he went to that airport. You know how much time he spent at that airport. You know the weight of the aircraft. So some of the costs you can yourself assess prior receiving the invoice. And this is combining operational data plus cost contract management and with some rules for defining pricing. And the challenging part is always ad hoc services. Ad hoc services are not something that you find in operational data. It's something that you need to gather with the operational people. So if you don't have any cost control system, you may do your cost control using the station manager. But when you move with a centralized approach, when you do a cost control system, the gathering of ad hoc services or services rendered to a plane is key element to get the invoice centrally validated. You will see over the presentation that cost control works better with detailed invoice information. So it's coming from the media that the invoice is transmitted to the airline, PDF, native PDF, scan copy, paper copy, or EDI. You will see that when we have a digital information, there is an opportunity to do a different job, but there is a challenge because you need to have a different tools. It's a change of mindset. Digitalization is not about transforming a paper document into a PDF. Digitalization is about changing the way we work to match element of a cost without having a human being looking at the invoice. You can still match the invoice at the high level with a PDF total, but it's not very powerful in terms of matching of cost, because what is happening is if you have any difference, you understand that there is a difference, but you are not knowing from where it's coming. Where when you do cost control based on details, you will see that you can identify the discrepancy at the details that justifies the difference at the total value. So it's a different mindset. It's very easy to match what is correct, and it's very difficult to match what is incorrect, because the source of what is incorrect could be referential data that are incorrect, flight operation data that are not accurate, billing data that are not accurate, pricing information not updated. So the logic is to match everything that is correct, 80%, 90% of the total invoice content, and then analyze what are the discrepancy. And there is also something we have learned over time is when suppliers are getting remarks from airline, they start to improve their reporting. Another thing also we found is the fact that a PDF invoice was fine for an airline. When we move the same invoice to an electronic version in XML, it became an issue with the invoice. So that means that when you give electronic data, when you process electronic data, you can find more issue with the invoice, and you can improve the process, and you can tidy up the tolerance you accept for invoices. First step in an airline is accounting. So is the first touch point in an airline. Usually people need to record the invoice. They can come in PDF. So it could be native PDF where you can do OCR easily. It could be an electronic paper. It could be a paper scan copy. What we have noticed is with COVID, things have changed. People are moved away from paper. So even if it's a legal document, it's a paper document, usually it gets scanned, or the airlines do the opposite. They receive paper documents, they scan it. But this is the worst format that we can process for an airline to be efficient and to do cost control. And then the best solution is EDI XML format. But you will see also through this presentation, it's not because we go electronic that we don't have issue with quality. So there are still consideration about how to use the standard and what are the data elements, do I capture the correct information? And we found that there is not always perfect, but the good things is people moving to digitalization, they are keen to improve the process. And all this may differ by supplier segment. So if you do a fuel invoice, if you do an airport invoice, a catering invoice, there is different practice, different way to work, and it's different. Then the step 2 is cost accounting. You need to allocate the cost according to the cost center. You need to code the invoice to add your cost center. You need to have the tax center. And it allows routing the invoice to the right person within the organization. So this is step 2 of the airline. But if you need to do data enrichment, you need to map the supplier, because the coding of the supplier in IATA system is generic, where in your ERP you have your own coding of the supplier. What is happening is you move then to the next step, that is a cost control. The cost control is more an internal process. It's not usually interfacing much with supplier, and usually is after the accounting and cost accounting. But sometimes they are done as a first point, because cost control system sometimes can do auto coding of invoice in the ERP. So the detailed analysis of the cost compared to the accrual is the first step. It could be done at high level total value with a percentage of tolerance. This is also another aspect that is very important to this session is, depending on the source of the data and the process you use, the tolerance will be different. If you do a process, a paper process based on costs based on the budget, the tolerance will be very high. If you have a cost control system that is getting information real time of the fleet movement and accurate data, then the cost tolerance will be much lower because you are capable to identify any discrepancy. This is always a change. It could be in detail or at the total, and it could become step one. So as I mentioned, you start with doing accounting, cost accounting, but sometimes when you have a cost control system, most of the time, everything goes to the cost control system, and then you do the entry in the ERP. So that means that it could save, when you do a cost control system, it could save time to people in finance, in accounting, and they don't need to do anything. It could be done automatically. So it's quite an important point. There is a lot of savings when you implement a cost control system, and it may vary on the way you work, on the system you use, and everyone has a benefit. Everyone focuses on identifying overcharge for the supplier, but there is a lot of other side benefits. It could replace the step 2 of coding, as I mentioned, and data enrichment is required again here. Something that we find doing some analysis is the tolerance in cost control system when using detailed costs is 5 times lower than when using the invoice total value. That means that when you receive EDI and you're capable to match invoice at the line item detail level, at the flight movement service level, the tolerance is 20% of the value of the tolerance if you only match at the header level of the invoice. So it just gives you an indication of a kind of tightening of the control you could put in place, or it's very difficult for us when an airline say, I do the human check of invoices to see how much they are matching when they do manually the work. When you do with the system, you have a lot of KPI, you have a lot of information, and it's helped the airline to understand how much savings they make. Sometimes the challenge is to realize that when you started to implement a cost control system, you find discrepancy you will never find before. But I think this is fine. This is the process. We need to do to use electronic data and electronic details to match this. And the benefit is recurring. It's not a one-time, because sometimes you do sampling, sometimes you check a supplier once a year or every month, or the station manager do that. So there's a lot of people do some work, but here the benefit is the process is systematic and automatic. There is an impact on the e-invoicing fiscal compliance, because things are moving around in the world. In the year 2000, it was very light, and it started to increase very much in 2015 with Latin America and some country in Europe. And then they started to spread around the world. And more recently, and the forecast is it will be everywhere except UK and US. But in fact, UK announced earlier this week that they will implement a similar process, and US is working on a process also for efficiency, not from a fiscal point of view, but not from an invoice payment point of view. So everyone is moving to this process that will impose for airline different format in different countries. So there is a SIS website where you can see compliance, and where you can see also you can register to the compliance bulletin. What is happening for you? It will translate in more invoice received in electronic format, but there will be different standards. So this one is a fake invoice for Saudi for Swissport. It's giving you how a fiscal invoice look like, and you see that from that invoice you get only the header information in the format that is standardized, but most likely the supplier will provide you an attachment that will be in another format that you will have to use, because this fiscal document will not be useful from an airline point of view. So that means that because you receive more electronic data, and because this new format are more like digitalized, it could help you to feed this cost control system. But that means that the cost control system need to understand every format of every country of the world. And as I mentioned earlier, it will be more complex for you to identify discrepancies. because you will understand that the total value of the invoice does not match what you expect, but you don't know where. So, and it could take sometimes for you to identify where it's coming from. Some consideration. So I mentioned earlier, there are different achievements depending on the process and depending on the entry format. So tools are important, input data are important, and they are equally important. There is not if you have the best electronic data but not system to use it, is not very useful. And if you have only a cost control system and only PDF, the achievement is a bit less. Still, there is an achievement, but it's not as great as if you have the two combined. You will see that Lufthansa is using in-house system where Qantas is using a market solution. So there is different approach. And in both scenarios, we understand that this is an headquarter lead initiative because it's not employing too much the local station to validate. They are more here to capture the information at the source and then do any discrepancy identify to check if it's correct. The source of this process is a contract database on the operational data. So this is part of the change management you have to do. You have to connect those systems with the cost control system to get accurate data. And as I mentioned earlier, data quality and invoice quality remain a problem, but it's a different problem because in the past you have a discrepancy in the invoice, but when you do electronic data, but you get a discrepancy of the invoice, but you know where is the discrepancy. So you can work to improve it. That means that when we migrate a supplier with electronic data, after a cycle of maybe 3 months, the data has improved and there is less discrepancy. Everyone is fine-tuning. The billing system is fine-tuned, the cost control system is fine-tuned, and the idea is to get an automatic match of the invoice if data quality is correct, if the invoice is correct. So that means that when you use the cost control system, if everything is perfect, it could be paid without any manual intervention. I mentioned earlier also, if you work with a digital data flow, it requires tools, and this transforms the way you work. It's an opportunity to do better. So we always say that in finance, in accounting, people sort some documents, they are typing some documents. So here we are removing everything that is low profile, and we focus people on analyzing the discrepancy. And for an airline is where you bring value to the airline. Everything related to forecasting, to better cost control, bring value to the airline. Cost management is the primary goal of this process, but as I mentioned, there is a lot of other side benefits: budgeting, forecasting, procurement, data mining. There is a lot of side benefits that you achieve through this repository. It's like you could imagine that you could build a chat GPT based on operation data, and you can query how many times do we have this plane in late, or you can imagine when you have electronic data, there is a vast opportunity of doing things, and there's also a process to be set up. So I will move now, and I will give the floor to Anna. So Anna, I'm giving you the possibility to manipulate, and I mute myself. Good luck.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Anna Zieleniucha, and I'm Senior Airport Cost Controller in Lufthansa Group Business Service. So our center provides services for 8 airlines. It's Lufthansa Passage and Cargo, it's Austrian, Lufthansa CityLine, Aerologic, Eurowings, Discover Airlines, and Air Dolomiti. In Invoice Control Department, we have about 50 employees responsible for checking correctness of the invoices for fuel, for air traffic control, for airport handling costs, crew costs, catering, flight irregularities, and warehouse handling. From IATA, we receive invoices for ATC and airport handling costs, and remind costs are processed out of IATA. And we are focused on prevention, recovery, quality, and automation. Now I would like to show how the process flow for ATC invoices looks like. It is the way invoice goes from document receipt to payment. So at the beginning, IATA files from billing members are automatically processed in the system thanks to flight level check engine. Each flight from billing member is compared with our cost simulation, which is based on contracts and operational data. Depending on matching result, invoices are automatically approved. In case of perfect match or matching within tolerance, or additional manual verification is needed. And everything is done in our invoice control user interface. In case of overcharges, dispute process via SIS portal is started. As you can see, IATA ATC invoices state 33% of all ATC invoices which are checked on flight level. And here we have a crucial information for ATC cost verification. They are flight date, flight number, and registration, which you can see on a supporting document which is attached to each invoice. And those three information are used by our flight level check engine as matching criteria. In case of manual verification, useful information are also waypoint codes where aircrafts enter and exit specific airspace. It's information about distance flown and also weight of the aircraft. 18% of ATC IATA invoices are disputed, and we start a dispute process when cancellation flights are detected on the invoice, or flights which belong to other airlines. Sometimes due to lack of information like missing registration or flight number, flight cannot be identified and should be disputed as well. The other reasons are distance difference, wrong routing, where flights in fact didn't enter specific airspace and the charge is not legitimate. We encounter also discrepancies caused by wrong aircraft weight or by duplicated flights. As you can see on the diagram, 49% of our disputes are accepted, 21 are rejected, and 30 are still in progress due to the fact that there is 6 months to initiate the dispute and each airline has 30 days for response. Now I would like to remind how the dispute process in SIS portal looks like. So in order to start a dispute process, we need to search for related invoice in SIS portal and initiate the dispute. Then we can see a list of all flights and we need to mark selected flights. When flights are selected, reason and disputed amount has to be assigned, and moreover there is a possibility to add remarks and supporting documents like cancellation proof. At the end, a summary of the dispute is created and it is sent to the billing member. Each dispute has its own unique number and can be tracked anytime. When status of dispute is changed, automatic notification is sent via email, so it's easy to track and control it. Due to the fact that we joined IATA SIS invoicing portal, we can assure compliance with legal and tax requirements. Thanks to standardization and harmonization, we can constantly improve our own processes like posting and invoice control. Moreover, control and approval process is more efficient, and dispute management is easier and more transparent. Last but not least, using of SIS invoicing portal enhance collaboration and partnership between airlines. So now I would like to give the floor to David, who will elaborate a little bit more about benefits of using invoicing portal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna and Bruno. My name is David Vaughan. I work with for Qantas Airways in Sydney, Australia, and I manage revenue accounting, taxes, and we have quite a lot to deal with the IATA SIS platforms and cost control systems. So I'm going to expand on the items that Anna has just taken you through, those 6 items, the benefits to join the IATA SIS invoicing portal, and reflect on those together with the implementation of cost control systems. So the first point here was compliance with legal and tax requirements. When an airline or a supplier utilizes IATA SIS to manage and receive their invoices, IATA ensures that this product continues to comply with key legal and tax requirements applicable to the industry, including digital signatures, legal archiving, and a very good level of security in our view. As Bruno pointed out earlier in the presentation, the e-invoicing scene is changing really rapidly around the world, and additional jurisdictions are mandating new requirements each year. So SIS is receiving frequent enhancements to support e-invoicing and tax requirements of invoices. This is going to help our cost control, as we'll see in a few minutes. But reporting to regulators is being brought up front rather than during a post-event audit. What this means, in some jurisdictions and increasingly, we either have to register our invoices or issue the invoices through a regulatory portal. SIS is going to cater for all known predominant global e-invoicing models and is planning to update its capabilities, including transmission and receipt of data to and from relevant tax and government authorities as required as relevant countries come online. And we saw that diagram from Bruno earlier, where it was projected up to around 2030, where we're feeling that most jurisdictions in the world will have some degree of mandatory e-invoicing or reporting. So there's a very active roadmap for the introduction of new countries, and it's updated by the steering group quarterly. And since the introduction of e-invoicing last year into SIS, 6 countries have gone live and more are expected, and many more are on the watch list. This URL here and quick QR code actually provides an update from IATA of the SIS e-invoicing compliance. So because of this, this is actually a very nice solution to use with your cost control system. We spoke about electronic invoicing, and I just want to recap what do we really mean by e-invoice? Well, a true e-invoice, in the case of, say, a SIS or SIS transmitted e-invoice, it includes relevant underlying key fields, component lines, and detailed cost elements and underlying data transmitted electronically in a machine-readable data interchange format with populated data fields that allow validations to be performed. It is this data that is the basis of receiving these invoices and the underlying data that will allow us to match and validate invoices. Ideally for SIS, it would be in an IS XML file format. True invoices are not really paper documents to be scanned by OCR in a service center. They're not even really the PDF style documents that we all receive attached to an email that then we send to a service center or a third party. They scan it, they input that into your into your ERP or other systems for further processing. And often we receive invoices with scant detail. Basically, they have accompanying Excel or other workbooks to support the underlying calculations. Now, although there is a degree of electronic interchange in all these formats, it's not really a true invoice where we receive the entire invoice and all the supporting information in a documented, consistent electronic format. All of the above items listed on the screen, they can lead to data inconsistencies, additional burdens of reconciliation, and require bespoke processes that often greatly vary across locations and suppliers. So basically, we're receiving all sorts of documents. They're either being scanned and fitted into a database schema to further process. So I see this as a transitionary type arrangement, and probably over time we'll move probably less and less of the invoices in this type of style and more into direct data interchange through various providers. So adoption of a SIS XML true electronic invoice offer uniform consistency validated against comprehensive database schema developed for SIS and specific to the airline industry. There's the ability to reuse queries and logic to check for variances, especially if a lot of your invoices are coming in a consistent format with underlying data. There's reproducibility of processing by airlines and customers. And there's potentially economies of scale once set up by suppliers and accepted by airlines. So there's there's quite a few cost control systems out there in the world, and all of the leading ones support SIS XML formats. The XML format itself, by its very name, extensible markup language, it's extensible to include fields for mandatory e-invoicing regulatory requirements in selected countries, and it can be expanded to support new fields as required. So if you have this type of format, we can add extra fields to support new and emerging requirements and maintain compatibility with legacy systems. And it forms a base in which detailed checks can be done. So again, XML it helps with the standardization and harmonization and an increased level and quality of service. It's universally consistent and compliant invoice presentation and concisely defined data formats, including those included in the IS XML formatted data standard. As I said, enriched with specific fields for various industry areas. So we have very specific fields for all types of airline operations: air traffic control, airport handling, engineering, communications and IT. Almost every area that you saw on the pie chart in the beginning of this presentation can be supported by such feeds. And by the very nature, it's expandable and can maintain compatibility with existing systems until time of new field supporting. Currently, it's widely adopted across the industry, and it's one of the major formats for data interchange of invoices. So in summary, it continues to meet the business needs by formatting data specific to the airline industry, including adoption of IATA, ICAO, and other leading data definitions and standards. All imaginable key fields can be adopted into the e-invoice data stream, including mandatory minimum standards for each industry product or service. So this is how we get this data in. In addition to that, you can provide a lot of supplemental data in addition to the standard invoice fields that allow you to do very, very detailed validation against PO and airline operational data. And as I mentioned, all of these types of subsets of the industry are supported, and many, many more. So consistent delegation of responsibility to appropriate teams as required if we have a cost control system. And often, once it's been established, finance may not need to touch or interact with the majority of invoices. If you electronically match with rich data, you will allow focus on the exception case invoices. It tends to increase productivity within the office and back office. It frees time for other work and focus upon those exception cases. And, you know, we've got to have underlying quality data, and that's really the key to matching this. Improvements made by suppliers, especially suppliers that might service more than one airline or company, they may well apply to the entire industry. So as suppliers upgrade and increase the level of electronic data interchange in the invoices and adopt standardized processes, then, you know, the work they do for one client or one customer may later apply to others. So everybody can benefit from this. Okay, cost control systems also provide easier implementation of airlines' own process improvements. So paired with a cost control system, invoice initiation, approval, rejection, and the accounting processes can be automated and linked to each supplier or airline's own process, ERP or general ledger system. Okay, I have a little bit of a delay in the slide here, so it may unblock in a second. Okay, we're unblocked. Okay, the CCS can be deployed in-house or across teams, centralized or through a managed service, often a hybrid model. And rich data within ISXML equipped invoices can be harvested to increase automation and level of matching for many cost categories. I think we've already covered this, the improved quality of invoices with this detailed data. It also allows automated detection, inadequate data, unclear data, incorrect data sometimes, or occasionally you get fields in invoices where we have substituted or proxy data where a party has just filled in a field for the sake of filling it in, but it doesn't really pertain exactly to the product or service they're charging for. So this becomes easier. Basically, the better quality, the higher the quality of the data that you have in the system, it becomes much easier to detect this and feedback. Suppliers also can benefit from providing compliant invoices because it allows for a more efficient approval process and payment process. So it's like a two-way street. So if we can get that data into the system in a quality format, then basically the whole process works a whole lot better. Okay, we've also reflected on the fact that efficiency of cost and approval processes using a cost control system leads to a reduction in operating costs. The controls can be applied electronically through the cost control system, especially when matched with operational or in-house data sources. Through SIS, status and other updates can be transmitted back to the supplier for immediate updates and information about payments. So instead of having the supplier call a help center asking what happened to invoice 123, they may, if they're suitably equipped, be able to see the status in almost real time. Electronic approval and rejection processes can be initiated in a cost control system for efficient operations. So the cost control system can actually be a slave to SIS, and that approval and rejection process can be initiated from a CCS and then go back through the same path back to the supplier if necessary for feedback or correction. And an efficient process links the airline's ERP, cost control system, SIS, and IATA clearinghouse. So essentially, if you look at the fact that electronic invoices can be received through SIS or through traditional ERPs, they can go into a cost control system and then processed back out to SIS or the ERP for payment. And of course, SIS integrates very elegantly with IATA clearinghouse for a very structured payment approach, which is set by a timetable and very well-defined and clear and consistent rules across the industry. So this is a very integrated ecosystem to utilize. Of course, there's actually more links between these because there can be notifications that go out to specialist systems, to suppliers, etc. So it's actually, in reality, can be as simple or as complicated as you can require for development. And overall, once this process is working well, it tends to have a lower footprint of management and integrated systems efficiencies. So there is definitely some efficiency gains to the effort involved in setting these up. When it comes to dispute management, a cost control system allows integration with underlying data repositories and SIS for improved dispute management timeframes. If there is an automated rejection process, notification to or from both parties, improved analytics to support the areas of issue, and some traceability of underlying data that can be shared with the vendor or customer, then you tend to get a faster turn time. You get the issues resolved quickly, and it's not like the old days where you had a forecast and some idea of the invoice you might be receiving, but it doesn't match, it gets placed on hold, tolerance is out. Maybe then your back office gets busy, they go on to process other invoices, and there might be one or two that sit out there and they're waiting for a reconciliation a bit later, a couple of months down the track. Eventually the supplier calls up to find out what's happening, investigation takes place, etc. With a properly connected cost control system, this sort of feedback can be almost immediate, and with underlying data you can pinpoint the area of concern, so that tends to lead to a much faster resolution, and that equals more efficient resolutions backed by data, less change of issues remaining buried for long periods, and early addressing of disputes via an automated means, reducing the size and the urgency of late escalations. So when this is all connected and you've got this electronic data and you can match it with some of your operational data or other supporting information, this is a very, very powerful tool. And that leads to collaboration and partnership. Timely feedback and integration between suppliers and customers as a result of insights and feedback from analysis and processing via and with cost control systems lead to improved data interchange and sharing of relevant data, relevant to the invoices, of course, and typically a reduction in error rates over time. It fosters a better understanding of how to cooperate and service each other's business, especially in regards to the back office invoicing. Collaboration and development of improved processes. So this process flow can run efficiently and effectively, and faster turnaround of invoices and queries. In turn, we see this improves the relationships between suppliers and customers, and it improves cash flow and reduces disputes. and fosters longer term and trusted business relationships. And this is a more recent thing. In many jurisdictions, companies have obligations to report payment processing times, especially for smaller companies. This has been increasingly required to be reported. Certainly in the country I'm living in Australia, we do have payment times reporting. And if we can get an efficient mechanism, especially for serving and processing these invoices on time, backed with payments, etc., in a timely and efficient way, then this also helps the KPIs for better processing times and helps basically the reputation of your company. Anna spoke about the models of cost control systems earlier, and we mentioned there was two distinct types out there today. There's an in-house developed and operated cost control system where the airline basically develops their own system and supports it. This provides the highest degree of tailoring to specific airline or supplier requirements. The development roadmap and priorities are fully under the airline's control. And it's often suited for large airline groups which have high volumes of transactions. For example, Lufthansa run their own in-house system, which is in-house developed and operated. Responsibility for system development, hosting, and cybersecurity burden lies with the developer and operator of those systems. Often they do have higher R&D costs because you may not always share the burden of development of all parts of the system with other operators or other vendors. But on the positive side, there is a possibility of licensing that product to third parties. And often with the development of your own system, there could be different accounting and tax treatments of the development costs dependent upon the approach taken and of course the jurisdiction in which you're operating. Now, probably a more common approach that we see across the world is cost control system that is managed by an outsourced provider or a market solution. This could include a managed service component maintained by contracted third parties. It's often a very scalable solution, so it can suit really from very small operators to very large volume operators. So basically you pay for the volume of invoices and transactions that go through the system in some models. Hardware resources and common development is sometimes shared with other users. And it's typically a light implementation footprint on site because a lot of these products are offered in the cloud. So virtualized, they're in data centers elsewhere, not always on your premises or even in your city. Benefits and limitations of a community-based model of development. So it's the old issue of a finite amount of development time and possibly a number of customers using these cost control systems. So the sort of development tends to go along the lines of the areas that require the development first or have the biggest payback. So you may not always get everything you want straight away because it is a community model. Customization is often available, however, it would come at a cost typically. And we are able to monitor the contractual obligations by carefully chosen and agreed KPIs and measures, performance measures. And you benefit from the expertise of a diverse community and a managed service often. So how can you contribute to increased benefits from SIS and cost control systems? Well, we feel that you have to start this journey with your suppliers to adopt e-invoicing and the underlying data that goes with that. Really, getting the data availability into an XML or other EDI type of format is key. Often it's a once-off setup for suppliers. Once they're set up and they're working with your system, it tends to keep working. And often that expertise can then be leveraged for the supplier with other airline customers or other customers indeed that can benefit once that once-off setup is working smoothly. That sort of process could be often replicated for other customers. And once this works, then basically you get that data in that electronic format, and this is the basis for starting this journey. Of course, you have work to do internally as well to make sure that your own internal KPIs and other data is available for matching, but you have to build this sort of step by step. But remember, there's actually a community of users capable and willing to service XML type files, and it's not an obscure format at all. It's actually adopted by many industries worldwide. So this is truly a very scalable and well understood solution that could be implemented. So it doesn't come for free. You need to place time and commitment to automate and streamline the processes involved. Typically, you can't do everything in your company at once. You have to focus on the areas of largest benefit. And Bruno gave us a hint of typically across the industry, some of the larger and smaller costs that could be suitable for this. There's the implementation of the cost control system itself and integrating it with your existing systems. Fortunately, many of the leading ones already support SIS and XML formats. Focus on the efficiencies and making the best use of the technologies. So the data, the e-invoices, efficient service centers, defining and implementing the right sorts of controls and checks with the right sorts of tolerances and levels for managing the exception. Actually finding the right expertise within your company or in a managed service to manage those exceptions. And certain categories of charges are very well suited to cost control systems, as we've seen from Anna and Bruno. It's really a step-by-step approach, and the best way is collaborative with your suppliers and customers as they're ready and committed to improving efficiencies in this area. And
thanks, David.
On that, I'm going to pass it back to Bruno.
Yeah, thanks, David. Thanks for this very comprehensive analysis. So some conclusion and takeaways. So what we have seen is electronic data flow is enabling, electronic data flow enable faster turnaround. So we saw that. It's quite important because in the past, the challenge was to get electronic data. Now the challenge will not be to get electronic data, but the electronic data we want. So there is an opportunity to change. The fact that fiscal invoicing is imposed everywhere is giving the opportunity to give the mandate of electronic invoicing, but without a twist to that, it will not be beneficial to the airline. So we are ready to embrace the change and to adhere to it rather than to try to find a workaround. So more electronic data increase a quicker return of investment of cost control. We did not touch this too much. First, it's maybe too touchy in terms of sharing this information, but there is a return on investment. When we speak to a supplier, I was with Amsterdam Airport and we are celebrating 100 years of KLM. And I say, since 100 years, you're sending paper invoice to KLM. For how many more years you want to work with KLM? So they say for a very long time. So you see that in aviation, there is a kind of recurring business. You may not work always with the same supplier or the same airline as a supplier, but you will work in aviation. So adhering to standards and the role of IATA is really key to get a return of investment. So whatever the return of investment is, there is a benefit. It helps also to do systematic checks. Today, as I mentioned, some airlines do sampling. They know that some suppliers do more mistakes than others, so they know which one to check. But here really is to say we want to check everything and it should be accurate. There is less human intervention when you base a system based on electronic data and having tools that allow you to identify things. It's much more powerful. There is people are focusing on more added value. It's not that they are leaving the company. It's more like their task is getting more interesting. They have to analyze, they have to do reports. There is more discrepancy identified, and it could be both sides. It's not like 50%. Always say 50% of mistake are with the supplier, but when you do cost control system, I'm sure you find a lot of incorrect source data, so you correct them, and over time this is improving. So it's another virtuous circle of total quality management. You process electronic data and it goes better and better. You can lower the tolerance, because when you start a cost control system, you may say I start with 2, 3, 5% tolerance and then I go down over time. When I am my control, my process are in place, my referential data is correct, my supplier is improving, so this is also another aspect. Today it's very difficult for us to identify every airline is doing cost control, but we don't know to which extent. But we see that when they implement a cost control system, the results are different. So it must be some reason there. There is a rising of electronic interchange and invoicing in the world. So it's really an opportunity for the airline to consider cost control project because we have it works better with more electronic data because we are pushing more electronic data. There is more opportunity for airline to consider this project because it will increase the fact that the return of investment will be faster. So our key message at the end is assess the opportunity of a cost control project, and cost saving and efficiency outpace the largest investment. So it's really an element that is important for CFO or people in finance. Cost control should at the end is not a cost. It's not a benefit at the end because when the people start to correct their invoice, but at least you pay what you have to pay, and everything else is more accurate, budgeting, forecasting. So there is a merit for people to consider this. And then we will move to Q&A. We have a few minutes to address Q&A. So if you have any question, you can type them into the chat box. There is a question box at the side. I don't see any now, but if you have any, don't hesitate. See any question coming. So let me thank David and Anna because we spent quite a lot of time to prepare this session. I hope it was instructive and you learned something. And we will be at the World Financial Symposium in Bangkok in a few weeks. So if you have any question later on, don't hesitate to contact us, and we will be keen to help you in any process. Thanks for today's call, and see you in Bangkok.